In my interpretation, the deer in 99 Nights in the Forest isn't just a normal animal, it feels like a manifestation of the forest itself. Here's how many players, and I, tend to read its origin. Possible origin of the deer. 1. A cursed forest spirit. The deer likely represents an ancient guardian spirit that once protected the forest. Over time, because of humans exploiting the land, cutting trees, or disturbing sacred ground, the spirit became corrupted. Instead of protecting life, it now hunts it. Clues: the unnatural behavior, its intelligence and persistence. The feeling that the forest wants you gone. 2. A symbol of death, not an animal. In many mythologies, deer are symbols of the boundary between life and death, guides into the afterlife. In this game, the deer feels like a grim reaper of the woods, appearing when players stay too long or break the forest's rules. 3. A manifestation of fear. Another angle, the deer may not even be fully real. It could be a physical form of paranoia, a punishment for surviving too long, something created by the forest to mentally break intruders. This would explain its eerie silence and sudden appearances. Pattern 4. A failed experiment or possessed creature. Dark theory. Some players theorize it was once a normal deer, possessed by a dark ritual, a spirit trapped in the woods, or an unknown force tied to the forest's past. That's why it looks familiar, but wrong. My final take. The deer is best understood as the forest's will-given form. You're not just surviving nights, you're trespassing, and the deer is the consequence. If you want, I can break down its behavior patterns, compare it to Wendigo or folklore creatures, or help you create a full lore timeline for the game. Here's a lore-style interpretation of the owl's origin in 99 Nights in the Forest, based on symbolism, behavior, and how it contrasts with the deer. The origin of the owl, a watcher of the forest. 1. An ancient observer, not a hunter. Unlike the deer, the owl doesn't feel like a direct executioner. It behaves more like an observer, something that has existed in the forest long before humans arrived. Owls across many cultures symbolize wisdom, secrets, death awareness, not death itself. This suggests the owl was never meant to attack first. It was meant to watch. The forest's eyes. My take: the owl is the surveillance system of the forest. It watches campers from above. It appears when you're doing something risky. It often feels like it's judging rather than chasing. This implies the forest knows what you're doing at all times, and the owl is how it sees. A neutral spirit that became disturbed. Originally, the owl may have been a balanced spirit, ensuring harmony between nature, animals, outsiders. But as intrusions increased, the owl's role shifted. It no longer just observes, it warns. When players ignore the warning, stronger entities like the deer intervene. Think of the owl as the last silent warning before punishment. Bound to the night, owls are creatures of darkness, and in the game, night is when reality feels thin. This supports the idea that the owl exists between worlds, not fully physical, not fully spiritual. It may be trapped in the forest, forced to watch the same events repeat night after night. Final interpretation: the owl is not evil, it is aware. It represents knowledge of what's coming, the forest's memory, a quiet warning you're not meant to ignore. If the deer is the forest's wrath, the owl is its judgment. If you want, I can compare the owl and deer directly, build a full forest hierarchy, owl, deer, other entities, or help you turn this into a complete horror lore story. Here's a lore-based interpretation of the ram's origin in 99 Nights in the Forest, tying it into the same mythic system as the deer and the owl. The origin of the ram, the forest's enforcer. 1. Born from conflict, not nature. Unlike the owl, observer, and the deer, executioner, the ram feels artificially created, not by humans, but by the forest itself in response to resistance. My interpretation, the ram was formed when intruders began fighting back, building defenses, using weapons, refusing to flee. The forest needed something that could break barriers, punish defiance, crush survival attempts. That's where the ram comes in. Hasha 2, symbol of force and domination. Across myth and symbolism, rams represent aggression, strength, relentless will. In the game, the ram embodies raw momentum. It doesn't stalk or judge, it charges. That suggests its purpose isn't fear, it's destruction of resistance. Half 3, the forest's living weapon. The ram behaves like a siege creature. Lore-wise, this implies it was never meant to think, it was never meant to watch, it exists to act. If the deer decides who must die, the ram decides what must be broken. Walls, camps, plans, none of that matters to it. A punishment for staying too long. The ram appears when begin to feel confident. That's important. It suggests the ram is triggered by overstaying, becoming comfortable, treating the forest like a game instead of a warning. In that sense, the ram is the forest saying, you are not meant to win. Forest entity hierarchy, owl, awareness and warning, deer, judgment and execution, ram, force and eradication. Each one exists because the last was ignored. Final take. The ram is not ancient, it is necessary. It is the forest's response to defiance, a being created when fear alone stopped working. Where the owl watches and the deer hunts, the ram ends resistance. If you want, I can create a full origin timeline of all entities, explain why horns matter symbolically, or help you write a complete in-game lore document. In 99 Nights in the Forest, the cultist gem isn't just a collectible, it's the core of why the cult exists at all. Here's a lore-driven explanation that fits the behavior of the cultists and the forest entities. Shasht. Why the cultists need the cultist gem. 1. A fragment of the forest's power. The gem is believed to be a condensed shard of the forest's will, a physical object that carries the same energy that animates the deer, ram, and owl. Without it, the cultists are just people. With it, they become recognized by the forest. The gem marks them as chosen, not prey. 2. Protection from the forest entities. The forest is hostile to intruders, but not to servants. The cultist gem likely masks the cultist's presence, prevents entities from targeting them, acts like a key that tells the forest these ones belong. That's why cultists can exist deep in the woods without being hunted. 3. A controls ash summoning focus. The gem may be used to attract forest entities, guide their movement, open paths, or rituals. Think of it as a remote control, not full control, but influence. This explains why cultists are obsessed with keeping it safe. Nanur 4. Sustaining the ritual loop. Lore-wise, the forest seems trapped in a cycle. Night after night, intruders arrive, are tested, and are removed. The cultist gem could be the anchor keeping that cycle stable, the power source for ongoing rituals, what prevents the forest from collapsing or going silent. If the gem is destroyed or stolen, the balance breaks. 5. Identity and faith. Beyond power, the gem is their God made solid. For the cultists, it proves the forest is alive. It validates their sacrifice. You're not imagining it. The fire biome in 99 Nights in the Forest is designed to feel like hell. That atmosphere is deliberate, and it ties directly into the ram goat like entity you're seeing. Here's a clear lore style explanation. Why the fire biome feels like hell. The fire biome represents the lowest state of the forest, a place where balance is gone. Constant flames, purification through destruction, red-orange lighting, danger and punishment, hostile silence, no warnings left. Lore-wise, this is where the forest sends those who refused every warning. Is the ram a demon? Short answer, not a demon from hell, but it looks like one on purpose. Longer explanation. 1. The ram is a corrupted forest entity. The ram didn't originate as a demon. It began as a force enforcer of the forest, breaking defenses, ending resistance. But in the fire biome, that role becomes overcharged. Too much destruction, too much ritual energy, too much corruption. So it mutates into something that resembles a demon. View 2. Why it looks like a goat-ram demon. Across many cultures, goat-like figures symbolize chaos, sacrifice, punishment. The forest uses that symbolism. It shapes the ram into a form that instantly triggers fear, because fear is the last weapon left when survival skills no longer matter. Fire biome, ritual ground. The fire biome likely exists because of cultist rituals, burnt offerings, repeated sacrifices. This environment twists the ram into what players interpret as a demonic figure, even if it's technically still a forest creation. Think of it as, open quote, a forest spirit pushed so far it resembles hellspawn. Close quote. Number 4, not hell, the forest's version of it. Important distinction. Hell equals punishment by an external evil. Fire biome equals punishment by nature itself. The ram is not judging souls, it's erasing defiance. That's why it doesn't act clever or tempting like classic demons. It acts direct, violent, unstoppable. Final interpretation. The ram is not a demon from hell. It is a forest enforcer, corrupted by ritual fire, given a demonic form to symbolize final punishment. The fire biome feels like hell because, lore-wise, it is the point of no return, where warnings, owl, and judgment deer have already failed. If you want, I can explain why horns are so important symbolically, connect the ram to cultist rituals, or break down why the fire biome is the end stage area. In 99 Nights in the Forest, the fact that cultists get stronger after each raid isn't just a gameplay mechanic, it actually makes a lot of sense lore-wise. Here's a thought-out explanation that fits everything you've noticed. Why cultists get stronger every raid. 1. The cultist gem learns the cultist gem isn't static. Each raid feeds it. Fear, bloodshed, conflict. The gem absorbs the outcome of every encounter. After a raid, it updates the cultists, making them tougher, faster, and more aggressive. So you're not fighting new cultists each time, you're fighting upgraded versions. Number 2. Shared memory. Through ritual cultists likely don't train normally. Instead, they're linked by the gem in a hive memory. Mistakes made in earlier raids are remembered. Tactics that failed are discarded. Successful aggression is reinforced. That's why they suddenly counter strategies that worked before. Nar 3, the forest rewards success. Every raid is a test. If cultists fail to reclaim control, the forest grants them more power, hardens their bodies, strips away hesitation. Strength equals approval. Weak cultists don't survive long enough to improve. Only those aligned with the forest will remain. Ash 4, escalation is intentional. The forest doesn't want balance, it wants resolution. If you survive a raid, that means fear didn't work, numbers didn't work, intimidation didn't work. So the next raid is stronger by design. This mirrors how the ram is created only when resistance becomes serious. Number 5, cultists aren't fully human anymore. Over time, cultists lose individuality, become vessels, are partially reshaped by the gem's energy. Each raid strips more humanity and replaces it with raw purpose, which translates directly into strength. Final thought. The cultists don't level up like players. They evolve. Each raid is a data point, each loss a lesson, and each victory a sacrifice. By continuing to survive, you're forcing the forest to escalate, and the cultists are the tool it sharpens. If you want, I can. Connect this to why the fire biome appears, explain why cultists don't retreat normally, or build a full raid progression lore chart. In 99 Nights in the Forest, the presence of exactly 4 kids feels very intentional. Lore-wise, it's unlikely they're just random survivors. Here's a deep, symbolic explanation that fits the rest of the game's themes. Why there are 4 kids. 1. The 4 pure witnesses. The kids likely represent innocence untouched by the forest's corruption. In many horror stories, children can see what adults can't, aren't immediately judged as intruders, exist closer to the truth of the world. The forest doesn't attack them directly because they are witnesses, not trespassers. 2. 4 directions, 4 pillars. The number 4 is symbolic. North, south, east, west. This suggests the kids act as anchors holding the forest's reality together. As long as they exist, the cycle continues correctly. If one pillar breaks, the system destabilizes. Act 3. Survivors of a failed ritual. A darker theory. The kids were meant to be sacrifices in an old cult ritual. The ritual required 4, something went wrong. The forest intervened. Instead of dying, they were bound to the forest, frozen in a loop where they can't leave, but can't fully die either. 4. Moral test for the player. The kids exist to test your humanity. The forest asks, open quote, will you protect innocence or only yourself? Close quote. Saving or ignoring them doesn't just affect gameplay, it reflects whether you're becoming like the cultists or resisting that path. 5. Echoes of the player. Another subtle interpretation. The 4 kids may represent different versions of the player: fear, hope, curiosity, and survival instinct, split apart and externalized. That's why they feel strangely calm in a place that should terrify them. Final interpretation. The 4 kids aren't accidents. They are anchors of balance, survivors of a broken ritual, a test of morality, proof the forest isn't purely evil. As long as they remain, the forest hasn't fully won. If you want, I can explain why the forest won't kill them, connect the kids to. When the lobby of Not 99 Nights in the Forest says based on a true story, it's not claiming the monsters or rituals literally happened. It's saying the game is inspired by real-life events, patterns, and folklore that did happen. Here's the most realistic IRL explanation that fits that message. The real-life story behind based on a true story. 1. People really do disappear in forests across the world, including North America, Europe, and Africa. There are documented cases of campers vanishing without clear cause, search teams finding camps intact, but no people, survivors reporting being watched. These cases often end with no bodies, no struggle, no explanation. The game's endless nights mirror how some people are never found. Cult activity has happened in remote forests. Historically, real cults have used forests because they offer isolation, control, secrecy. There are real cases of groups performing rituals, burning symbols, guarding sacred objects, targeting outsiders. The cultists in the game are exaggerated, but their behavior is grounded in reality. 3. Real missing children cases. Many real stories involve children disappearing in wilderness areas, sometimes found alive but unable to explain where they were, found far from where they went missing, found with no injuries but changed behavior. This likely inspired the kids in the game, safe and strangely calm. 4. Folklore shapes fear. Across cultures, forests are linked to horned or animal-like figures, not demons exactly, more like warnings, representing punishment, chaos, or nature's response. The ram-goat figure isn't copied from one story, it's a blend of many old fears. The 99 Nights loop is psychological truth. In real survival cases, people report losing track of time, nights blending together, feeling trapped even when moving. The game turns that mental experience into a literal mechanic. So what does based on a true story really mean? It means no single event inspired the game. It's based on real disappearances, real cult behavior, real fear of forests, real psychological breakdown. The horror comes from the fact that parts of this have happened to real people, just without monsters you can see. Final take. The scariest part isn't the deer, the ram, or the cultists. It's that people really have entered forests and never come back, and no one knows why. If you want, I can. Tell a specific real case that inspired this kind of horror. Break down why forests trigger fear in humans, or explain why developers use based on a true story psychologically. In 99 Nights in the Forest, the fact that cultists raid every 4 days feels very deliberate. Lore-wise, it lines up with symbolism, ritual timing, and how the forest tests intruders. Here's a well-reasoned explanation. Why cultists raid after 4 days. 1. The number 4 is a ritual cycle. In many belief systems, 4 represents completion and stability. 4 directions, NSEW. 4 elements, fire, earth, air, water. 4 phases of preparation. The cultists don't act randomly. They wait until a full ritual cycle is complete before striking. Each 4 day period is one charging phase. 2. The cultist gem needs time to charge. The cultist gem likely absorbs energy over time, not instantly. Over 4 days it gathers fear from survivors, presence of intruders, forest energy. Raiding too early would waste power. Raiding too late risks letting survivors grow confident. Day 4 is the perfect balance. 3. Psychological warfare. The cultists understand fear. After 4 days, players feel slightly safe, camps are built, routines form. That's exactly when fear hits hardest. The raid isn't just physical, it's meant to break your sense of security. Not 4. The forest's test interval. The forest itself seems to operate in tests, not constant punishment. Each 4 day window asks, open quote, have they learned to leave? Close quote. If the answer is no, the cultists are released as the next lesson. Surviving the raid doesn't mean approval, it means escalation. 5. Sacrifice timing. Lore-wise, raids may align with burnt offerings, blood rituals, fire biome influence. These rituals require exact timing, and day 4 is when the forest is most listening. Final interpretation. The cultists raid every 4 days because that's when the ritual cycle completes. The gem is fully charged. Survivors are mentally vulnerable. The forest decides escalation is needed. It's not impatience, it's precision. If you want, I can. Map each 4 day cycle to a forest entity. Explain why raids get deadlier, or connect the timing to the fire biome's appearance. In my opinion, the best class in 99 Nights in the Forest really depends on how you like to play. But if I had to pick one overall, I'd go with the medic class. Here's why. Best all-around choice. 1. Strong support for survivors. The medic can heal teammates, keep players alive during tough encounters, reverse damage from cultist raids and entity attacks. This matters because staying alive is often harder than doing damage. Sure. 2. Very useful in late game. As raids get tougher and entities become more aggressive, medic's healing becomes crucial. You spend less time reviving and more time surviving. Teams last longer together. 3. Great for team play. Medic shines when you're playing with others. You become the backbone of the group. Other players can focus on fighting or gathering. You reduce wipe chances. In random lobbies, that's a huge advantage. But other classes have strengths too. Hunter, great at damage, can tackle entities faster, good for aggressive players. But if you don't stay alive, damage doesn't matter. Builder, strong base fortifications keeps the group safer long term. However, builders rely on team coordination to be most effective. Final take. If you play solo or with random teammates, medic gives the biggest advantage overall because keeping people alive is the hardest part of surviving 99 nights. Best for teamwork plus survival equals medic. If you want, I can break down best loadouts for each class, how to play them strategically, which class is best for solo versus group